These trainings are created to help people restore urban natural areas to healthy ecosystems by removing invasive plants and planting native plants. Cascade Land Conservancy, Seattle Parks and Recreation, and Tahoma Audubon Society created these trainings with funding from the USDA Forest Service Urban and Community Forestry Program.
A major part of any restoration event is replanting with native plants once the invasive species have been removed. This will help prevent the invasive species from returning and move you into the next phase of restoration. My name is Crystal, and I'm with the Green Tacoma Partnership. And today in this video you will learn about how to select native plants for your site, how many you should select for your site based on your size and goals, and when to plant the native plants to ensure survival, as well as the different stock types of plant materials that are available. Before selecting the native plants appropriate for your restoration site, it's important to take a look at the native plants that are growing in that area already. This will give you a clue about the soil types and what plants are best suited for that environment and have the greatest chance for survival. The Green Cities program staff will help you in selecting that plant palette or community. For example, in the Puget Sound Lowland Trough, a common forest community consists of the Douglas fir tree, the sword fern, and the Oregon grape. Now, if you don't know your native plants, a great resource to have with you in the field is a field guide. When you choose to plant matters. Volunteers like to come out in the warm summer months, but that is not a good time to plant native plants. Instead, choose a cool, wet winter month, usually between October and March, for planting native plants at your restoration site. For specific dates based on stock type, consult the planting calendar. Too much or too little? Determine the amount of plant material needed at your site in advance. It takes a few calculations. This will save you time and money. Consult your field guide for details on how much plant material to purchase for your site. Once you've received your plants at your restoration site, there are 3 steps to take before planting. Those steps are inspection, staging, and layout. With the first step of inspection, select a few of your plants and look carefully at them to make sure there are no signs of root rot, disease, or infestation. Don't accept plants that aren't healthy. Once you're happy with the plants, proceed to the second step, which is staging. Over here, we've staged some plants, which is just selecting the plants that you want to plant in an area, putting them in a group near that site. So you know that these plants are going to be planted out here. This is important for large work parties or large planting events. If there's a lot of materials, you might have several staging areas. The final step is to lay out your plants, which is just simply the act of putting them exactly where you want them to be planted at your restoration site. This should be done in advance before volunteers arrive, and it will make it simpler for them because they'll know exactly where they want the plants to go. The first stock type that we're going to plant today is potted or container plants. These are one of the most common stock types for restoration, and volunteers will most likely be familiar with them as it's what you find in local nurseries. I'm going to dig a hole that is as deep as the plant in the pot is and about twice as wide as the plant. This will allow the roots that are contained within the plant to be able to spread and grow. Oh. You may need to loosen the plant from the container. You can do so by squeezing the edges or tapping on it with a tool. This one came out nicely. And then you'll loosen with your hands the soil and loosen the roots up that are in there. Try to spread them out a little bit. Now this hole's too deep, so I'm going to put some more material back in the hole so that the plant is level with the ground when it's planted. But I'm going to make a little cone in the center so that the area in the middle of the plant won't get any air pockets in it. And then replace the soil. Don't put any other materials in, just the soil that you took out around the plant. Pat it down firmly, making sure it's level with the ground and that the stem is not covered up. And if you have access to water, you can water the plant. Pat it down again, and you can do a pull test just to make sure that the plant's firmly in place. Another common stock type is bareroot. Bareroot plants are often deciduous trees, and they are planted in the winter months when the plants are dormant and their roots are exposed. So it's especially important to keep the plant's roots moist at all times. This can be done either by putting them in a bucket of water, as we've done here, or putting them in plastic bags with water, or using wet sawdust and keeping that wet at all times. For planting the bareroot plants, we use the same methods as container plants. We dig a hole that's deep enough to make the plant be level with the ground where the stem is not covered, and then at least as wide as the roots, which are usually more spread out than the container plants. So I'm digging my hole and checking to see if it is deep and wide enough. And it's definitely wide enough and a little bit too deep, so I will put some more soil back in it and make a cone in the center, and then spread the roots out, and then make sure it's about level with the top of the ground and the stem, and then replace the soil you've just removed back into the ground. And to help keep air pockets out, firmly pat down the soil. Make sure the roots are covered, but that the stem is not covered. So firmly pack that down. If you have water, go ahead and water the plant. If you're planting in the wet season, you shouldn't need to water. And then finally do a pull test to make sure the plant won't pop out of the ground, and also that it's standing upright. The last stock type I'm going to demonstrate today are emergent plugs. Emergent plants are plants that grow in near shore or wet areas, often along shorelines and stream banks, riparian areas, and wetlands. Emergent plugs tend to be small and easy to transport and need to be planted to the appropriate depth. This emergent plug, as you can see, has long roots. And so we're going to need to dig a little bit deeper, but we can also spread them out and know that they will grow. You don't need to dig out all the way. You dig in an area that is wet because that's the type of plant that likes to grow there. So you don't need to be watering the plant because it's already wet. This hole can be a little bit narrower and smaller than other holes. And using a small hand trowel or other small hand tool works best. Sometimes digging a hole is harder than it looks. In this case, there were some roots and rocks in the way, but eventually got down pretty deep, deep enough for the existing roots to be able to get in there and to be able to spread out. So we also loosen them up a little bit and be careful not to damage or break too many of them. Breaking some is okay, they'll grow back. And then we place it in the hole. It's actually a little too deep, so we'll put a little bit soil back in. So we want it to be level with the existing ground. Replace the soil, or the mud in this case. Pat it down firmly, make sure it's tight in there, not going anywhere. And in emergent plug nearshore area, you don't need to apply any mulch to this area. Once you pat it down and it's in place, you're done. Once you've gotten your plant in the ground, the final step is to apply a layer of mulch around the plant. The mulch helps protect the plant in the winter months by keeping a warm buffer, as well as keeping moisture in, and also keeping invasive plant seeds from regrowing around that area. The most common type of mulch is wood chip, and wood chips should be applied around the plant in a ring or a donut 6 to 8 inches high, but make sure to leave an area around the plant so that the plant itself does not have any material on it. Once this is accomplished, if you have water, you can water your plant and you'll be done. Oh. And a final step, it's helpful if you have any flagging or tape to put in place. That just helps volunteers and others know that that plant was planted there intentionally, and it helps you find it because often the plants we plant are small to begin with. Great job! You're almost done. You've got your plants in the ground, watered and mulched. Now it's time to think about one more step. Planning for the future. You want your plants to survive. They're young plants, so they may need to be watered for the first couple of years. Make sure to check a maintenance and watering calendar to figure out a schedule that works best for your site. Let's recap what we learned today. We learned how to select the appropriate plants for your site and how many for your site, as well as when the proper time for planting is. Then we learned about 3 steps to prepare for planting at your site. The first step is inspection to make sure your plants are healthy. The second step is staging to get the plants that you want to be planted in the proper area. And finally, layout. Putting the plants exactly where you would like volunteers to plant them will make it easy for them to do that. Then we learned about 3 different stock types that are commonly used in restoration events: bareroot, potted or container plants, and emergent plugs. Each one has its own unique characteristics and needs, and following the instructions for each of them will help them be successful. For bareroot and potted plants, it's important to, once they're planted in the ground, apply a layer of mulch around the plant to help protect them and to keep invasives out. And then to water the plants if you have access to water. Finally, if you follow all of these instructions, you'll give your plants the best chance for survival, which will lead to the best opportunity for a successful restoration project.